History is often taught to us as a series of accidents. A random fire here, a surprise war there, a sudden, tragic pandemic that sweeps across the globe, seemingly out of nowhere. We are told these events are chaos. We are told they are nature's fury. But what if they aren't? From the terrified streets of 14th century Europe to the empty airports of the COVID-19 era, there is a signal hidden in the noise. A pattern so precise, so calculated, that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It is the story of a virus that behaves like a soldier. It is the story of a cure that behaves like a subscription service. Tonight, we are going to open a file that was supposed to remain closed. We will travel from a dusty, forbidden diary written during the Black Death straight into the heart of the modern coronavirus crisis. And finally, we will look into a future that terrifies scientists and generals alike. This is not just history. This is a warning. The year is 1348. The place is a port city in Italy, silent except for the bells tolling for the dead. The Black Death has arrived. In a small, stone room, a physician, let's call him Elias, is breaking the law. By order of the church and the crown, bodies are to be burned immediately. But Elias is not burning them. He is dissecting them. He has spent months treating patients who dissolve into fever and agony within hours. He has seen the buboes, the black spots, the terror. But as he cuts into the tissue of a wealthy merchant who died just hours after his ship docked, Elias finds something that stops his heart. Deep within the lungs, embedded in the tissue, are tiny, crystalline structures. They are geometric, symmetrical. Nature creates chaos. Nature creates organic curves. It does not create perfect, jagged cages inside the human body. Elias realizes he is looking at something artificial. He begins to map the outbreaks. He notices that the plague doesn't move like a wind. It moves like a chess piece. It strikes specific trade hubs. It avoids the homes of certain noble families entirely while devastating their competitors next door. In his diary, he writes a sentence that could get him burned at the stake. This pestilence has a master. It does not wander. It is guided. He begins to suspect that what the world calls a plague is actually a primitive bioweapon. Elias didn't just study the dead. He studied the living. He watched the money. While the peasantry died in the millions, a strange phenomenon was occurring in the high courts. A small group of apothecaries and alchemists, shadowy figures with connections to the east, were quietly visiting the palaces of dukes and cardinals. They weren't selling hope. They were selling certainty. Elias noted that those who purchased these specific, unmarked vials never fell ill. Not once. Even when their servants were dying in the hallways, the masters remained untouched. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The disease and the cure were two halves of the same mechanism. If you can create the problem, an engineered virus or a toxic agent, and you hold the exclusive rights to the solution, you don't just become rich. You become a god. Elias understood the business model of the apocalypse. Step 1. Manufacture a crisis that creates absolute panic. Step 2. Wait for the people to beg for safety at any price. Step 3. Sell them the safety you denied them in the first place. He tried to publish his findings. He tried to send letters to universities in Paris and Oxford. But the letters were intercepted. His clinic was burned. Elias vanished from history, leaving only his diary behind. Fast forward nearly 700 years. The year is 2020. The world is paralyzed by COVID-19. The coronavirus has shut down the global economy. And if you listen closely to the whispers in the corridors of power, you might hear the ghost of Elias screaming. Look at the pattern. Just like in 1348, we were told the pandemic was a random act of nature. A bat, a market, an accident. But then, questions began to rise. Questions about a lab-engineered virus. Questions about gain-of-function research. Evidence that this pathogen was perhaps too perfect during the pandemic. And look at the money. While small businesses were crushed, While the working class lost their savings, the world's billionaires increased their wealth by trillions of dollars, the apothecaries of our time. The pharmaceutical giants did not just sell a product, they sold a subscription to life. Governments signed secret contracts, liability was waived. The cure became the ultimate asset, but there is a difference between Elias's time and ours. In the Middle Ages, they controlled the bodies. Today, they control the minds. During COVID, the most powerful weapon wasn't the virus itself. It was the narrative. Fear was broadcast 24/7. Any doctor, scientist, or researcher who suggested that COVID-19 might have lab origins or that there were alternative treatments was silenced. Digital book burning, the pattern is identical. Only the technology has improved. So, where does this leave us? If the past and the present are mirrors, what does the future hold? This is the part of the story that should keep you awake at night. We are entering the age of the genetic bioweapon. Technology now exists to edit the building blocks of life as easily as editing a Word document. We are moving beyond simple viruses like coronavirus. Imagine a pandemic that is smart. A virus engineered to target specific genetic markers. A weapon that could wipe out a specific family line or a specific population while leaving everyone else completely unharmed. Imagine a binary weapon. Part A is a harmless virus released into the water supply. It does nothing until Part B is triggered by a radio frequency or a secondary chemical agent. In this future, health is not a right. It is a privilege granted by the state. The pattern Elias saw. The cycle of crisis and control reaches its final form. A world where you must subscribe to the monthly cure just to participate in society. If COVID-19 was the dress rehearsal, what does opening night look like? Elias, the physician, died in obscurity. He believed he had failed because he couldn't stop the machine, but he was wrong. He left a record. For the first time in human history, we have the ability to see the pattern in real time. We have the internet. We have the ability to share information faster than they can censor it. The coronavirus pandemic woke millions of people up. It shattered the illusion that the experts always have our best interests at heart. The next crisis is coming. They will try to sell us the fear again. They will try to sell us the bioweapon disguised as nature. They will try to sell us the cure disguised as safety. But this time, the audience knows the ending of the movie. We are the descendants of those who survived. And now that we know the script, we have the power to rewrite it. If this story resonated with you, share it. Because the only thing that kills a virus of the mind is the truth.